welcome again, everyone, to the next chapter in The Reaper and the Scribe. Sunday, April the 5th. Hope everybody is still doing well and everybody's safe and keeping themselves busy and keeping a positive attitude. It's really important. Today is going to be chapter 14, so without further ado, let's get started. Monday dawned in the 19th and 21st centuries. As Freddie Chambers, Alice Watson, and John Watson slept in their beds, Albert and Doris Watson, Alicia Winters, and young James, and of course Toby the horse, were making their way back to Thwaite Gate to pick up a new load of coal. Jamie Winters was starting what was to be his final day as John Watson, apprentice to the engineer. Jamie was whistling A Forest by The Cure as he arrived at work. He quickly removed his coat and accepted a mug of steaming tea that was almost instantly delivered to him. As the strong, hot beverage began to warm him up, the engineer, back earlier than expected, shouted for him to go to the office. "John, my boy, how are things going?" "Very well, sir," answered Jamie. "Tomorrow is Tuesday, and a new locomotive is coming to the station. I want you to see it. So I want you to meet me there at 10 a.m. "Do you want me to come here first?" asked Jamie. "No, I don't want you full of oil and grime. Just come straight to Marsh Lane." "I will look forward to that, sir," said Jamie. The first realization then came to his mind that tomorrow might be the day of the switch. It would be 1 week exactly, and all of a sudden it was going to be a day he didn't have to work. He began to wonder if all he had learned in this week in the past would stay in his consciousness. He began then to think up another plan. He would write down every single thing up to the end of his work today and hide the book in the cellar with the other goodies from the past. As Albert toked on his pipe, Alicia's grip on the tiller tightened as her train of thought changed. "Penny for 'em, lass," said Albert. "I'm wondering what lies ahead," she answered. "Good things, lass, and plenty of 'em." "Oh, I hope so, Albert. I really do. Maybe the first port of call should be your father." "Oh, there are so many I have wronged, Albert, and it's weighing heavy on my mind." "That right there tells you that you are a better person." "How so?" "Before, you had nothing that weighed heavy, because you didn't care for anybody but yourself," he answered. He stood up and announced, "We're here." Alicia steered the barge to the towpath and handed the tiller to Albert, just in time to stop Doris coming up from below. "I will tie the boat off, Doris," offered Alicia with a smile. "Are you sure, lass?" asked Doris. "Yes," shouted Alicia as she jumped over the side, taking with her the stern rope. Like before, she quickly tied it off and ran to the bow. Doris had made her way there and threw the bow rope to Alicia. Catching it the first time, she wrapped it around the post and drew the bow to the canal side. Back in Holbeck, Jamie was cleaning his boss's office as the engineer checked the drawings of his latest designs. "Come over and look at these drawings with me, John, and tell me what you think it is." Jamie put his sweeping brush down and moved quickly to the drawing board. Looking at the drawing, he knew exactly what it was, but realizing he was in the guise of John Watson, he said, Is it a steam engine, sir? It's a steam locomotive. You will have to learn the difference. In my view, a steam engine is a static engine that powers machines, like the one in our factory. A locomotive is a living thing that runs on rails and is the future of transportation. We certainly live in exciting times, sir, observed Jamie. Indeed we do, boy. Indeed we do. The two men spent the next hour going over the simplest parts of a steam locomotive, and Jamie was in his element. This was not because of what he was learning, because he already knew what he was being taught. He already knew what the engineer was telling him. He also knew more than the engineer's restricted view of steam power. It was such an immense privilege to be in the room with such a pioneer. Again, Jamie hoped that this feeling would stay with him when he journeyed back to his own time. In 2013, John Watson had already been picked up by Lee Coates and was hard at work in the museum cleaning the locomotive that had been run over the weekend. Lee called him into his office. "Sit down, John. I would like a word with you." John sat, somewhat uneasily, in the office chair. "Have I done something wrong?" "No, John, not at all. I just wanted to say that I am very impressed with what you have learned this week. You are certainly a very good student." John looked at him and said, "Student? I don't know what you mean." "You don't know what a student is?" "No, sir, I don't," answered John. "Never mind. It's not important." "Can I ask you a question, John?" "Anything," was John's reply. "I know you are living with Freddie Chambers at the moment, but where do you live normally?" "I live on board my father's canal barge." "I see. What canal do you moor?" "Mostly the Calder Navigation, not far from Thwaite Gate, or the Leeds Liverpool." "Why do you ask?" "Because I'm thinking of setting you on permanently." John's eyes widened at the thought of finally working with steam engines. "So, about this barge you live on, how many berths is it?" "I don't understand your question," answered John. "You know, how many bedrooms?" John began to laugh and said, "There are no bedrooms on a canal barge. Everybody knows that." "These are just aptitude questions, John. It's a way of me finding out how smart you are. So just answer, even if the question seems silly." John nodded his head, having totally forgotten about his situation. "Next question, John. Who is the current monarch?" Again, John looked bewildered by the question. "Who is the king or queen, John?" "That's easy. Queen Victoria," was the instant reply. Without flinching, Lee asked another question. "What cargo do you transport on your barge?" "Coal, the most powerful fuel in the world." "Last question, John. What is the name of your horse?" "Toby. He is a fine, strong horse," he replied without a thought to what he was saying. Lee Coates looked at John and said, "That's fine, John. Now, you go to the cafe and get yourself some lunch." As soon as John left his office, Lee Coates rang Freddie Chambers' phone. "Hello, Lee. There's nothing wrong, is there?" "I want to know what's going on." "What do you mean?" "John Watson. There's something you're not telling me. I was talking to Bob Jones from York this morning. I asked him what he thought of our friend John, and he told me he was the strangest guy he had ever shown around. For instance, he was the only locomotive enthusiast that had never heard of the Flying Scotsman or the Mallard, and he was only interested in the rocket. In a conversation just now, he told me the name of the current monarch is Victoria. Well, like I was saying, he lives in a coal barge? Not a Mennonite society? I don't know what to say, Freddie answered nervously. You have had him with me, surrounded by Victorian machinery. He doesn't understand modern swear words. He informed me that canal barges do not have bedrooms, and the one he lives on hauls coal and is powered by a horse named Toby. We need to talk, but not like this. I will come and see you tomorrow sometime. I won't be in when you drop John off tonight. Tomorrow it is, then. With that, they both ended the phone call. Freddie took a sharp intake of breath and turned towards the bedroom. At the door stood a worried-looking Alice. "What's the matter, Freddie?" That was Lee Coates. "I didn't see him." "What?" said Freddie in frustration, then quickly thought he had never used the home phone in front of the siblings before. "It's just a little machine that lets people talk to each other. With it, the person you want to talk to doesn't need to be with you." "Well, it doesn't look like you like what he had to say," said Alice, not really understanding. "Well, Alice, you're right. John let something slip today." "He wasn't hurt, was he?" "Hurt? Oh, no, Alice. It's just a saying. What I mean is, he told Lee some things about you two that I wish he hadn't." "Let's not spoil the day with something my silly brother has done," offered Alice with a smile. "You're right, my love. We may have precious little time left." Alice held out her hand, and Freddie took hold of it, placing his other arm around his beloved's waist. He pulled her towards himself and kissed her eager mouth. As it was now midday, Freddie decided to take Alice for a treat. With the exception of the burger she had had at Kirkstall Abbey, everything she'd eaten had been what she could eat in her own time. Freddie deemed that today would be different. They would eat Thai cuisine. They both donned their winter coats and made their way out into the cold but bright day. "Where are we going, Freddie?" "To my favorite Thai restaurant." "Well, why are we in the market, then?" "Because here it is." The two of them stopped at a small Thai cafe at the bottom of the market called May's Thai Cafe. There were only 3 tables outside and 2 small ones within, but it served the best Thai food in Leeds, in Freddie's humble opinion. As they sat down, the resonance of May's laughter could be heard from inside. It was the kind of laughter that made you smile, whatever your mood. A distinguished gentleman came out to take their order. Raj was his name, a multilingual, educated man who did the front of house for his lovely wife May. He always greeted Freddie with a smile, and Freddie introduced him to Alice, saying, "This is my new wife, Alice. Alice, this is my good friend, Raj." From inside, May had overheard the conversation and made a rare trip away from her many walks to come and say hi. Will it be drunken noodles for you, Freddie? Asked Raj, knowing his favorite dish. Yes, please. Alice has never eaten Thai before and has never had anything with chilies. In that case, may I suggest pad thai gai? It has no chilies. Alice eagerly nodded her head. The meals soon arrived, and Alice just looked at it in amazement. Never before had she seen such color and beauty in a bowl of food. Those are called noodles, Alice, and the meat is chicken, said Freddie. Alice took a tentative first morsel of food. As she began to chew, her taste buds sprang to life, and her eyes opened wide. I have never tasted anything like this in my life, she exclaimed, eagerly placing another forkful into her delicate mouth. I'm so glad you like it, smiled Freddie. When the wonderful lunch was over, Freddie and Alice bid Raj and May goodbye and began exploring the market in Leeds. Again, Alice ran from stall to stall like an excited little girl. Freddie just smiled and tried to keep up with her. The afternoon wore on, and the winter daylight began to fade into gray-blue, and then the black of night. Somehow, Freddie knew that with the sun, his time with Alice had waned too. At Armley Mills, John had finished his task and was waiting on Lee Coates, who was completing some paperwork. John looked about the place, as if for the last time. He didn't know why he thought that. It just felt that way. Lee exited his office and locked the door. Come on, John. Stop your daydreaming and let's get you home. Okay, said John as he gingerly opened the car door and carefully stepped inside. The drive home was again uneventful for Lee, but a ride of torture for the Victorian. John had, in fact, kept his eyes closed for the entire journey again. As they pulled up into the Calls, John was the first out of the car and went round to where Lee was sitting. Thank you for all you have learned me, he said. For all I have taught you, corrected Lee. John just looked confused and shook Lee's hand. Will I see you again? Asked Lee. John thought for a second, but looked even more confused and said, Yes, no, tomorrow? I don't know. Lee just smiled and shook his head, saying, Tell Freddie not to forget about tomorrow. I will tell him, answered John as he walked away towards what had been his home for the previous week. Lee drove off, and as he did, John heard a voice calling him from behind. It was Freddie and Alice, arriving back from the town center. The three of them went inside and up to the penthouse. Once inside, Freddie asked John what had happened today, and John replied that he had taken an aptitude test and that he had done well with it. Freddie, of course, instantly knew what Lee had done and wondered how he was going to explain all of this now his Mennonite theory was totally out of the window. The evening was spent talking about all of the wonderful things both of the siblings had experienced during their week and how big and noisy Leeds had become. Freddie realized that although they had spoken about going back to their time, the two siblings had forgotten that it was imminent. With that in mind, Freddie carried on with all the talk about what a wonderful time they were having. The chatting went on until bedtime. Freddie and Alice bid John good night and went to their bed, whilst John settled down on the comfy couch. On the other side of the canal, and time, night had also fallen. Tea time was over, and the pots washed. The galley had been turned back into a makeshift bedroom, and all the family were sitting around the stove, talking. My ideas about what a lass's work is have changed. You have shown me how strong a woman can be, and my outlook in general about things has changed, young Alicia, said Albert. Thank you, Albert. I've never changed anyone's mind for them before in my life, Alicia answered honestly. You have gone up in my estimations 100%, offered Jamie. Are you going to let Alice help you on the barge, and let John build his future in engineering, Albert? He continued. Aye, lad. If that is what they both want, it is fine by me. Having a son who is an engineer will help when Toby is eventually replaced with a steam engine, remarked Jamie. I'm not sure about that, lad. It would take up too much room, and I wouldn't be able to carry enough coal. The thing is, when you are motorized, you will be able to pull several boats behind you, and you will be able to transport up to 10 times more coal per journey than you do now, informed Jamie. Albert scratched his chin and looked deep in thought. The idea pleased him greatly. He remembered his friend Tom talking about such things. What about unloading? Asked Albert. Don't worry yourself about unloading, Albert. Steam will change that, too. You mustn't fight the changes, for they are coming. Many of your contemporaries will be left behind, but you won't, because you will be forward-thinking. You will have a son who will be able to explain the new technology to you, and you will be the only man with the sense to let your daughter work alongside you. It all sounds a bit scary to me, but I will do my best, answered Albert. We know you do, because we have seen the results with how your business has grown, said Alicia. Albert stood up and announced, There will be no work tomorrow, so we get all this off to the right start. I will be putting all that painting skill you talked about, young Alicia, to good use. We will do a new sign to mark our new beginning. Well, then, if there are going to be so many new changes tomorrow, we'd better get an early night, said Doris. The candles were blown out on the little coal barge in the 19th century, and its entire crew all drifted peacefully to sleep.